So we got an important piece of legislation rolling. And yes, I'm talking about the Genius Act. But after looking closely at it, I'm actually more weary of it. Do I want it to pass in its current state without restrictions? And I'm actually more in favor of the Democratic push to ban the president, Congress, and cabinet officials from making their own stablecoins before this is passed. Now, they're still debating it in the House, but they have passed it in the Senate, and they've passed it in the Senate with veto-proof majorities, 66 to 32, so they can speed this debate up in the Senate. 15 Democratic senators did actually vote for this, including Catherine Cortez Masto, Adam Schiff, surprise, Mark Warner, Ruben Gallego, and several others. Of course, Chuck Schumer did actually vote against it, and Senator Josh Hawley was absent during the vote. However, this hasn't really become law. It just simply allows the Senate to begin discussing, debating, and potentially amending the bill before the final vote. And I really, really hope they add a provision that restricts tech companies in some degree, and of course, outlaws the president, Congress, and cabinet from making their own coins. So it does actually have guidelines for stablecoins. And many do actually see this as a positive step because it does introduce clear rules ensuring stablecoin issuers hold property reserves. So you don't have any of those algorithmically backed coins. You have US dollar backed coins. And obviously, if these stablecoins permeate, they should benefit the US dollar and its dominance in the world. So generally, this sounds like a very, very good bill for crypto. And I would actually agree with him if it included strict regulations for companies, especially the large tech companies, when they issue their own coins. But right now, there is none of that, which is why this bill actually needs to be amended and certain restrictions added. Because I'm not comfortable with companies like Meta, which is Facebook, Microsoft, Amazon, or others creating their own coin. People complain about how Apple is a walled garden. But in that walled garden, they still use USD. Imagine if they said, in this walled garden, we're going to now make you use our Apple coins. We're no longer going to use US dollars. We're going to use one-to-one backed Apple coins. So you have to trade your US dollars for Apple coins when you want to buy Apple products. And here's the thing, sometimes when you trade your dollars for those coins, you can't really trade back one-to-one again. Think about some of the gaming ecosystems. So one of the laws of the act should be if you trade one way, you should be able to trade one-to-one the other way, because remember, the whole thing, if you guys play League of Legends, Riot Points, you can buy Riot Points with dollars, but maybe this is something new that you can do now, but I remember back then, you couldn't actually trade your Riot Points and cash out for dollars. So I don't want a situation where I trade my dollars for Apple Bucks, and then, I have too many Apple Bucks for what I want to buy, and then I can't trade my Apple Bucks back for dollars. That does also present an obstacle if liquidity is ever a problem. So if they hold enough financial reserves, you should always be able to go both ways. Like Tether and USDC, I know Tether opened up redemptions, and I still think you can redeem at essentially any time. So I definitely want restrictions put in there saying that you have to be able to trade back. You can enter the walled garden and you can leave the walled garden. Otherwise, it would be a massive, massive problem, and I would not want this bill to pass because then Apple can just trap my money in their ecosystem and not let it leave. And I'm sure you guys can see along with me why that would be a very bad idea. You buy 30 bucks of Microsoft bucks to buy 6 months of Word or whatever. It only costs 15 bucks, but now you can't trade the other 15 out, and that money just stuck in the Microsoft system. And you can easily see why this would be very, very enticing for companies, because obviously if they hold your money, they can loan it out and use that money to accrue interest. and essentially gather profits for themselves. And obviously, you don't get any part of that profit. You're essentially just loaning them your money for free. By the way, that's also what happens if you hold a balance in PayPal. You essentially are loaning PayPal money for free. So don't do that. I mean, I keep like $3 or $4 in PayPal, but that's $3 or $4. I guess that helps them if everyone keeps $3 or $4 in PayPal, but it's not a big loss to me because interest on $3 or $4 is like 3/10 of a cent per year. So I don't really care all about that. But if you have a bunch of money dumped into Meta, Microsoft, or Square or something, you don't use all of it to buy their service and you just hold it right there because you can't trade it back out. That could be millions upon millions of dollars in interest profits for them. So you can easily see why they'd be interested. So we need to work on that. I also don't like them just controlling, so much of our money at once and not being able to let us back out. They can actually really lock people into their own ecosystems and basically trap us there for a long time. It's more power for the tech companies, more power that they do not need to control our lives. The other thing, obviously, is political leaders, including Trump himself. I do not think they should actually have financial interests in crypto-related projects while they're in office. After you leave office, I really don't care what you do. You can do whatever you want, but while you're in office, you should not be able to do this, and you should not be issuing your own stablecoins while you're in office. The only currency I want you to be dealing with and promoting the interest of while you're in office is the US dollar. I definitely don't want you issuing stablecoins and basically driving your own business's interests while you're in office. That could definitely be detrimental to the United States, selling favors, obviously, and basically making other countries use your stablecoins in return for some kind of kickback on the national level. We can kind of see some of those things happening with the sanctions lifting on Syria for Trump Tower Damascus, and of course the controversy over the $400 million plane given to the DoD to use as Air Force One for Donald Trump in the Middle East, which will go to the Trump Library Fund after he is done being president. So I generally like this bill, but there are serious concerns about both political leaders and the tech sector that I have about this bill. And I really hope that both the Democrats and the Republicans will actually work on this bill and mend it to actually kind of kill those abuses. And while they're at it, make the rule that about stocks too. Don't let senators, congressmen, the president, or cabinet members trade stocks while they're in office. We've all seen abuses of that, and we all know that the only group of people that constantly outperforms the market on a trading basis is Congress. And obviously, all of us know there is a very obvious reason for that. Need to stop Pelosi and a lot of our colleagues from taking advantage of their position to actually make money. Obviously, Pelosi will be against that, but we actually need to unite around that, as well as the Stablecoin Act. And obviously, like I said, big tech companies take some of that power away from Microsoft, Meta, Apple, etc. Or they don't have that power yet, but I bet they're very, very interested in that power, both for profit purposes and for control purposes. They can get a lot more into our spending habits, and into our personal financial matters if you allow them to trap our money in their system with unredeemable coins. So, and even if they're redeemable, that is kind of like a barrier. If they force people to use their coins in their ecosystem, it just feels different from when you're actually using dollars. That one barrier can get a lot of people locked into their ecosystem. If you haven't really experienced one of these ecosystems, that's kind of like the feeling you get. If you've ever been in a gaming system, you buy some of their coins, you see it as kind of like money in that system. You stop seeing it as money anymore, and that's one of the ways that gaming companies get you. If they sell stuff directly to you for dollars, people will be hesitant. But oh man, if you get them to trade their dollars for Easter eggs or gemstones or something, and then you charge gemstones for products in game, they will spend like hotcakes. That is a very, very mental thing that happens to a lot of players, and that's kind of how they get in trouble. So I definitely think there needs to be something done about this where like it's less you lessen the chance for them to trap you in their own ecosystems, because I definitely think that could be detrimental to the consumer and obviously the whole political leaders thing. So let me know what you think about this. Like and subscribe, hit that bell notifications button, and I will see you guys later.